Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, it's part 2 of our Marionette build. Well, what a struggle last week's show provided. A half-hour show struggling through making 3 pieces of a marionette. Truth be told, guys, when I put the footage into the editor, the show was actually well over an hour. I think it was an hour and 14 minutes, and I had to whittle it down. And I didn't want to take away a lot of the information, so I managed to get it down to half an hour. We're going to try to get them at a regular length show from here on in. But I think it was important to get the basis of what it is we were trying to accomplish put out there so that if you want to try this project, you have an idea of how to start. Now, as I said in last week's show, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. Last week we got the chest, the abdomen, and the pelvis done. And today we're going to start on the legs and see how that goes. So I have an idea what kind of joinery I want to do. So you know what? Let's just head over to the bench and get this show started. Well, do you ever have an idea in your head and you know what you want to do, but you don't know how to explain it? That's kind of where I'm at right now. So I want the legs to be somewhat of a tongue and groove kind of a setup. So for that, let's just say that this is our top leg, our thigh, and this is our calf. Now, guys, here's the thing. I need the leg to be shaped kind of like this. And then from there, our tongue and groove, I'll just dotted line this here. This will be inside to allow the joint to move. So why this angle? The angle is so that it's not going to be able to bend this way. In fact, we'll probably have to cut a couple of flat sections here to make it so that it can't bend forward, but it can bend this way, but only until these 245s meet. And once they meet, they're going to stop, giving you a 90 degree for the leg. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my stock for this. And we said already in last week's show that these top legs are 1.5 inches. So I'm going to cut a couple of pieces, 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. I'm going to measure off my plans to get the length, and we'll get our 4 blanks cut. Okay, so I've cut some maple here, 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. And for the thighs, I've made them 5.5 inches long. And for the calves, I've made them 5. Now this might be a little long, I don't know, but it's a marionette. So we'll just sort of play it by ear. So I think the first thing I want to do is I'm going to cut the 45s in the back of both the thighs and the calves. I'm going to keep them lined up here on our sketch so that I know what's what, and so I can keep an eye on things. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cut those 45s. I'm just going to do that over at the table saw, but as I said, I want to leave a flat lip on the front end where the kneecap would be. I think 1/4 inch will be enough support to keep the leg and the knee joint from bending the opposite way. So 1/4 inch back from the front edge, we're going to run a 45 degree across the back of each of our pieces for the thighs and the calves. Okay, and my theory on this is that when the legs bend, they'll only bend to this point. So if the marionette is sitting down, and then when they stand up, they will only come to this point and not be able to go any further. But now how do we accomplish that? Because this isn't exactly a tongue and groove. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some kerfs right in the middle here. I don't know how deep. I'm going to cut them deeper than not and test. And what the grooves are going to be for it's going to be like a spline. I'm going to place a spline in between this to act as the hinge between the two pieces. Again, I don't know exactly how well that's going to work, but we're going to try it and see what happens. Now, as well, the foot kind of has the same scenario here. You can point your foot down kind of thing, but you don't want it to go back. At least it shouldn't, unless you've had some kind of weird birth defect or had a really bad accident. But we'll get to that eventually, because I think we need to make them all together in line so that everything lines up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these kerfs in the 45 sections here of our thighs and our calves. I'm going to use my spline cutting jig and clamp them to that jig to be able to run them through the saw. I'm going to try to make them a little beefier because we want some extra support here. Now, you can cut these by hand, but you know what? I have a table saw, so why not use it? And those would be the dados in our leg joints to be able to let our knee bend. I'm not sure what to do with them just yet. I've cut a couple of splines for there. They're a little loose fitting into this joint, but I think that's okay. We're going to see how it goes. The next thing I want to do is the exact same process as these ones here, but I want a thinner kerf, not quite the 3/16 that I've got up here, but maybe just one saw blade width, a kerf width at the bottom. The distance, I'm not sure, so I'm probably going to go about an inch up to give me room to play with, and that will be to accept the feet. I don't think we need another video of it, so just in the calf sections, we're going to cut in the bottom in the same direction as what we have these ones up here. We're going to cut maybe a 1-inch deep kerf at the bottom, and that will allow us to attach the feet afterwards. Well, at this point, I'm kind of stuck because my thought is that these little splines will get glued into our kerf here. It's a little loose, but I think I can make it work. But where do I drill the pivot hole for this to make the thigh go in and bend naturally, or bend like a knee? It's kind of confusing. I'm not sure what to do with it. So I'm not going to be cutting up or drilling any of my good pieces. And I have made a mock-up in cardboard. This one here represents the thigh. It's cut exactly the same as what our thigh is. And this one here represents our calf if this exact spline was put in place. And this is going to give us an idea of how our joint is going to work. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble this joint kind of like this, the way that it would be if it was put together as the marionette. And I have a little pin here, and I'm just going to pop a pin through and see where the best pivot point is. So if I put a hole right there, how will this joint pivot? It's not too bad, but this kneecap kind of sticks out. Well, with a costume, will it be that bad? I don't know, but we're awfully close to the edge here, so I'd like to try something different. Let's try if we go more in the middle and back a bit more, right there. Now again, we have that issue of the front overhang here of our knee kind of sticking out, not to mention that our 45s never touch. So our stop isn't really going to work very well. It will work, but just not as well as what I would like. So it looks like we need to pivot it closer to the bottom. I think I was closer with my first attempt. So let's just see here. We're just going to stick this in. Yeah. You know what? I think that one works the best, even though the kneecap does stick out. I think we can make that work. So I'm not too concerned. I'd much rather do this than have to test and muck around with some big chunks of maple. All right, so I'm going to get the splines glued into our lower half, just like that. And once I get them glued in and they're dried, then we can drill our holes. What we'll do is we'll put the whole joint together. And once we're happy with the way the joint is sitting, then we can clamp it and drill the hole right through everything at once over at the drill press. So let me get these put in and we'll drill them, and then I guess we can just test and then shape. Well, while we're waiting for that spline to dry in the calf section, I think we can do some work on the thighs. And what I'm going to do is I want to put a line here in the middle. These are 1.5 inches, so at 3/4. And we're going to put a crosshair here at 3/4. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw an 1.5 inch circle around here, or a 3/4 inch radius. And we're going to shape this in that radius to be able to fit in here and allow our leg to move inside, because we can start working on our wire that goes in here while we're waiting for the glue up to dry. So we're just going to do the same on this one, and then we're going to take it over to the belt sander and we're going to place our radius on our thigh pieces. All right, and with that shaped right in the middle of where we drew that radius, I have drilled a hole. Now this hole is much larger, or not much, it's about I'd say a 1/16 larger than the holes we were drilling for the coat hanger wire before. And that's just to give a nice loose fit so that this can function easily. So what I have is some scrap 1/8 inch material. I'm going to place it at the top of the pelvis and at the back of the pelvis to space this leg out from here. And I'm going to hold this leg in place, and I'm going to mark where that hole is going to be to pivot the leg across through this center support area that we made here. So I'm going to mark that, and I'm going to drill the hole the same diameter as this coat hanger, which in my case is 3/32. And we're going to start forming the bracket that is going to hold these legs in place. Now, we're not going to form it too much because there's some shaping to do. So these legs are going to shrink a little bit, and that way I'll be able to hopefully anchor the brackets along here. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but we do need to shape the legs, but at least I can get the hole drilled for the center here to get our bracket mounted a little later. Okay, and for now we're just going to test that just to make sure. It's a tight fit in through that center core, but that's okay, that's what we want. We're just going to check it and make sure that the legs rotate. Yes, and you can see that the pelvis, the top section of the pelvis here, acts as a stop. So his legs can't go flying up behind his head, kind of thing. So both of them turn just fine. They cannot go any further than the back of his butt. Now, one goes a little further than the other. I'm a little confused about that because they're cut the same. That's strange. Maybe the hole isn't quite straight. It might be a little crooked on the hole, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to make a difference. But either way, both of those legs turn perfectly, very easily. They don't have a lot of splaying out to the side, and they definitely don't go out of configuration for what they could physically on a human. So there we go. You know what? This thing has more flexibility than I have. So I think we're doing okay. All right, so there we go. There's the holes in the pelvis. And at this point, our glue up should be done for our calves. So let's see if we can't get that in place. All right, so our spline that we glued in here is dry. This fits pretty well in this upper joint. It's a little loose, and that's what I want. I want this to swing freely. I think I might like it even looser than what it is. I want this really to swing. I don't want this to have any friction whatsoever. So I think I'm going to be sanding down or even scraping down these splines to give them a nice loose fit. We're going to do some extra testing here on our cardboard mock-up, and once we get that done, we'll take each of our legs over to the drill press, and I'm going to drill the holes that we need to be able to join these legs together. Once we get that done, I think it's really time that we need to start shaping these legs. So in order to drill these knee joints, I clamped it to my straight edge, and that keeps everything aligned and keeps everything in place where I need it, prevents everything from shifting. And once you get that drilled, you end up with this, which is our knee joint, and you can see it swings pretty freely, but we have this section of our spline, which is now going to stick up out over the knee. So we need to trim that. We can also see that the knee, this is our calf, this will not extend any further forward. It stops at the edge here and will not extend any further back than 90. And while, you know what, I know our legs actually do bend further back than 90, but it's a puppet. How many times are we going to get this puppet to kneel down? I don't know. Maybe that's something we need to change. But what we're going to need to do is we need to trim this spline. And I'm not sure how to do it other than possibly if I mark here. So if I do that, it looks like I can just sort of trim this flat at 90, right where I marked it here. Just pull this pin out, and then we can round off this front end, and that will allow it to move in the joint without being seen. So I'm going to get those cut off and rounded, and then we'll test and see how it fits. And there we have our one knee joint trimmed, and if we look and we bend it here, we can see that there's no more spline sticking up over our knee joint at any point in time. So that will be held inside here and disguised in the costume and will never be seen. So we're going to do the same with our other leg. And guys, now it's time to shape these. Now, I don't want to get too much into the shaping of them because I think it's going to take a considerable amount of time to be able to do it. But I think what I'm going to do is use my power carver, and I'm just going to shape these so that they're round. They're more like a leg and less like a robot. That is really not rocket science here. It's just shaping them the way that you want. If you don't have a power carver, you can use a spoke shave, a block plane. You can use knives. You can carve them with chisels. This is all personal preference now. We have the functionality of the knee joint that we want. We just need the shape of the leg so it's not so robotic and it's not so big and bulky. So I'm going to carve these down and I'll show you what I end up with when I get that done. Well, it's been quite a while, but I think I have the leg shaped. Now, it's not perfect by any means, but it does function. We do have more shape than what we did with just the blocks. It's still quite wide. If I compare it here in the pelvis, it's still a wide joint and is not going to allow me to bring the wire out and up like what I thought. But I think I'm going to contend with that afterwards. We'll just see how that goes. But for now, I do like the way that this leg looks and the way that it functions. So I think I'm going to carve my other one, which is over here. Just give you like a before and an after here. This is what we started off with, and this is what we ended up with over here. So I'm going to carve this one up. I may do more carving later on, more shaping. I think that's all going to depend on how the final model plays out. But for now, I'm going to get this one carved up, and then I think, you know what? I don't know. Maybe add the feet. Sure. Let's add the feet. Okay, so that is both legs pretty much shaped. I think I'm pretty happy with the way that they function and with the way they look. So now the feet, and what I've done here is I've just freehand drawn out kind of a shape like a foot. It's almost like a swimming flipper at this point in time, but that will fit on here. And I've made a left and a right. I think they look pretty proportionate. I mean, I'm not sure. It's hard to say until they actually get onto the marionette. I may need to make them a little larger. But what I'm going to do is, just like we did with the knee joint, I'm going to cut a little kerf right in here where the heel would be for basically a little bit of a spline. I'm going to glue a spline in there, and that will sit right up inside this dado that we cut down in his shin, and we are going to shape the foot, give it a little more of a foot shape using sanders and whatnot. And once we're happy with it, we can put this in place, and we can drill through for our coat hanger pin. Now I'm thinking that in order to get that pivot motion of his foot, this kind of a motion, I may need to round this ankle. So it's all a matter of, depending on how much movement I want, I think that'll determine how much shaping I actually do here on this section. So let me get those shaped up and put in place, and I'll show you what I come up with. Well, I completely changed my mind on the whole spline like we did at the knee joint. And I've made this little bracket here out of coat hanger wire and drilled it in. Eventually it will get cemented in here. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that inside the dado and then drill another hole across to be able to give the foot front to back movement. I also think that will give kind of a little more natural movement side to side here on the foot. Not a lot, but some. So I think I'm going to drill it in. I'll test the movement of the foot, and then I'll sand this ankle here as need be to get the movement that I need. So let me get those drilled, and then we'll test the movement of our feet. All right, and if I hold this in place, here's his foot. If I lift the leg, oh no, I think that looks pretty good. Now there is more movement there. If I wanted, I can bring it right around the back, which is kind of weird, but I don't think I need to shape that, because in the whole grand scheme of using the marionette, I think that's a pretty natural movement that's happening there. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. So I'll drill the other hole, and we'll get the pin put in, and we can move on. Well, with all my testing, I'm having some problems with the hip joints because they keep sliding around. So I did say I wanted to connect them up here into the pelvis. So what I have done is I've drilled a hole right through the flat part of the pelvis here, and I've bent our bracket around. There we go. And we're just going to tap that in there on both sides, and that should hold our legs securely during our testing. And it wouldn't take much to put a little bit of two-part epoxy in the ends of these coat hanger frames to be able to hold them in place. So this here is kind of what we're looking at now with the legs and the pelvis and the feet. And I mean, it seems to be some pretty good movement. I like how loose and flowing it is. We are getting a little bit of binding on the feet, where if I do certain movements, there, you can see that there, the foot just stayed up. which makes me think that I need to shape the front to give it that softer profile to prevent it from hooking like that on the front of the ankles. But other than that, I'm quite pleased with the movement of the Marionette, except for that front foot thing. But as far as the movement of the hips and the movement of the thighs, the legs in general, I think it looks great. So, all right, we are moving right along with this. And unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today. Guys, initially I wanted to have, by the end of today's episode, I wanted this Marionette to have functioning legs and arms, and it didn't happen. I really don't want to take away information in the name of speed, of trying to get this done so that we can push the schedule to get what I need done in an episode. So I'd rather give the extra information or show some of the struggles and that sort of thing, and just get this much done than to really push it. So either way, I think we've made some great progress no matter how you look at it. And considering I really don't know what I'm doing, it's coming along pretty nicely. I'm pretty pleased with the results so far. Guys, if you haven't already, if you found any part of today's show interesting, informative, fun, you know what, why not like and subscribe to the channel? We have an absolutely incredible audience base, and I'm hoping that you're going to consider becoming a part of that. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed the content today. I hope you're enjoying this build. This is something really out of my wheelhouse. This is something out of my comfort zone, and I'm really enjoying the process of learning it. So I hope you're enjoying the content. I hope that if this is something that interests you, that you're going to give this one a whirl for yourself. And more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video. Woodworking video. Oh, he's got no head.